hello, and welcome to another Wavelength Wednesdays. I'm your host, Waveney, and every week I bring you tips and strategies geared towards connecting, inspiring, and influencing you to being the best in your personal and professional life. Are you ready to get on the same wavelength with me? Yes, I'm hearing a yes. Great. Okay, so this month, our focus will be on transitions and the various transitions that can occur in your personal and professional life. Now, when I was researching or brainstorming, not researching, brainstorming on what my theme should be for the month, I thought about the fact that April was a bit messy, scary, um, heavy for us. We were introduced to a pandemic lifestyle, right? We had lockdowns, we had curfews, we had um, days that only days that we could go to the supermarket and the other essential places like the banks. We got introduced to terms such as essential workers and all these things. And the ending of March into April was a huge shock to our system, a huge adjustment to our system. And it was all about the pandemic. And so now that the dust is settling, I figure that I would speak about in May transitions because we are going through a huge transition. And let me kind of turn so I could get the light out of my glasses. Yeah, we're all going through a huge transition period. And so I decided, why not speak about transitions? So today, I want to speak about the transitions that occur in our professional lives, on our jobs. Right now, some of us are going through it. Some of us will go through it in the future if the economy doesn't pick back up fast enough. Some of us may never go through it, which is fine. And for those of us who aren't, we should consider ourselves lucky and blessed. So some of the things that I'm going to speak about today, some of the career transitions that take place. Well, before that, I'm jumping ahead, sorry. Let me just give you the definition of transition. So the definition is the process or period of changing from one state to another. Let me repeat, the process or period of changing from one state to another. And we go through a few of them in our career. Right now, we have persons on reduced work hours. We have persons who have been separated from their company. And when I say separated, I'll get to that in a bit. We have persons who are laid off. We have persons who were made redundant, or as the official HR term, reduction in force. And so those are just a few of the transitions that can occur. It's happening now during this pandemic, and it can occur outside of the pandemic. And so today I want to put some context around each of these. I will be touching a little bit on the law, the labor laws of the Federation, St. Kitts and Nevis. And then I'll move to what feelings arise and what next steps should be. So let's jump into it. So I mentioned reduced hours, and some persons are fortunate enough to still have their job, but they're on reduced hours. So instead of working 8 hours a day, they may be working 4 hours a day, and they may also be getting reduced pay as well. And this is kind of the trend throughout the world for some companies, because businesses are trying to stay afloat, they're trying to stay alive, and so some businesses are fortunate enough that they don't let go all their people, they keep their people, but they just have reduced hours with reduced pay. Some persons, they don't have that, they're very fortunate, they do have reduced hours and they're still getting a full salary. Kudos to those employers, and those persons should be thankful and consider, themselves really blessed. Now I want to get into the others. Now, separation. When I say separation, separation is just a fluffy HR term which means resignation, which can be voluntary, or when you terminate someone, which is involuntary, right? So it's just a fluffy term. And I really like the term separation instead of saying somebody got fired, because it sounds so aggressive. It has a really, I mean, if you're separating somebody, it is negative, but it just adds to it. So the term we use is separation. Now, in my country, each country is different, each labor law is different, and you should really know your employment law. We call it labor. Same thing. Employment, labor, you should really know the laws surrounding your terms of employment. And it's a great thing to know so that you don't have somebody taking advantage of you. There's lots of business owners that don't know the labor laws. A lot of people speak about things that are not in the law, but it's precedents. And precedents really means that somebody has been doing something for a very long time and it has become the norm. So a lot of that happens, as well as you may be working for somebody who is like a foreign company, and in their country they do things differently than our country. And so wherever you're viewing from, you should really know the labor laws. So in my country, let's first start with the easy one, where people resign. And that's, like I mentioned, termed a voluntary separation because they're doing it off their own. Now, if you're going to resign from a company, it's best that you give them notice. In the US and other larger countries, persons give 2 weeks notice, and that's standard and that's a norm and that's okay. And it doesn't matter if you are a manager, if you are a salaried worker, I should say, not manager, because in the US they do have some managers that are hourly and they clock in and out, believe it or not. But whatever the notice period is for that country, you should know it. So in my federation, it is 2 weeks. If you're hourly paid, you should give a 2 weeks notice. And if you are salaried or monthly paid, then you should give 1 month notice. Some employers accept 3 weeks notice. And the reason why you want to do this is because you want to leave gracefully. You don't want to leave with a bad taste, giving the employer a bad taste. You don't want to just get up and leave. It's not nice. And I have seen where people hold on to that. Or in some companies, there's a policy that if you don't give the adequate notice, then you won't be eligible for rehire, right? And that's just the fact of it. So you want to give adequate notice. Now, let's talk about and I'm just actually let me insert this here. So lots of the times people think that when they resign, there's this sum of money locked away for them. And this is not so. The only thing that your employer owes you are your wages for the days that you've worked up until the time that you resign, and any vacation payouts that you have. So if you haven't taken your vacation, there's a calculation that they do. Labor Department has that information. It's it's not a secret, so they can share that with you. But those are the only things that your employer owes you. There is no additional monies or funds that you are owed. And again, this is just specific to my federation, St. Kitts and Nevis. And the reason why I bring this up is because I see this a lot in my job. People think that they're like, okay, this is it. Yes, this is it. There is nothing else. So once again, the only thing that's owed to you are your outstanding days that you work. And if you haven't taken vacation, the vacation. Alrighty, I am back and pardon the interruption. Right. So as I was saying, that the only thing that your employer owes you is your, where was I? And I should know this off the top of my head, right? Is any outstanding days work and any vacation payouts that you may have. There is nothing else. There is no little box anywhere. The other thing too that is helpful for you to know is that your employer, the employer doesn't have the right to withhold any part of your wages. So for example, in lots of countries, if you don't return company property, and it could be something as simple as a name badge or what have you, if you don't return company's property, they can decide to withhold your wages until you return the stuff. Here in our federation, employers don't have that right. If somebody resigns and they have company, they're in possession of the company's property, the only thing that the employer can do, well, two things the employer can do. They can either ask them to return it, and you should know, persons should know to return it, or they can get the law involved. That's it, really. So if you're ever in a situation and your employer withholds your salary because, and some employers do that because they're upset that you're leaving, you're a great employee, but while you're there, they never recognize you and know that you're leaving. It's an issue. They may try to, if that ever happens, if anybody tries to spite you and withhold your salary, it is wrong, and you should seek the advice of the Department of Labor, who will call them up and get them to take care of it. Okay, so just so you know. So let's move on to something that is not really pleasant. I mean, none of these things are pleasant. Even when somebody resigns, you want to help them, you want them to stay, unless it's for a better opportunity. There's a bittersweet thing about it. In some workplaces, persons operate like a family. They're really close knit, they get along well, and so leaving is always difficult. And then sometimes separation is involuntary, such as termination. Now, in St. Kitts and Nevis, the law states that to terminate someone, you must have warned them. Prior to the termination, you must have warned them 3 times in writing, and it must be for the same offense. That is the law. So if you are being terminated, or if you are a small business owner or employer, whomever you're looking at this, it must be in writing 3 times, and it must be for the same offense. In other countries, such as the US, it can be for different things. You can terminate someone for being late. You can terminate someone for poor performance. You can terminate someone for, I don't know, whatever, something else. But in St. Kitts and Nevis, it has to be for the same thing, and it has to be within a 6 month. Those warnings have to be within a 6 month period. So, for example, an employer can document you in January, and then in January document you in April, and then in, let's say, next year, later down in the year, let's use November, they come back with something else. 6 months would have passed, right? 6 months would have passed. So it has to be 3 offenses for the same thing within a 6 month period. No, you can terminate someone for gross misconduct, and gross misconduct, I would advise companies to check with the labor department, because I've had situations where I'm working for the company and a particular offense is deemed as gross misconduct, and then I call the Department of Labor and they're like, no, that's not gross misconduct in our books. It's not gross misconduct within our the realm of the law. So that's important for you to know. Gross misconduct could be theft, it could be fighting, it could be, bringing a weapon to work, something like that, those types of things. But like I said, each company is different, so you want to check in with the Department of Labor. In the case of gross misconduct, you don't have to wait, you don't have to be warned, you don't have to do the 3 warnings. You can just go straight to termination for gross misconduct. So that's important for you to know. Unless if some employers do unfair dismissals, Labor Department is really great about that. For example, you don't want to terminate somebody when they're on sick leave. As a matter of fact, the law protects them. You can't do that. You can't terminate somebody because they're on maternity leave. You can't do that. You can't terminate somebody for joining a union. If you terminate them, it's unfair dismissal, and you're not a good employer. You're not really a good employer. So you are going to have some issues with the Department of Labor. Okay? And I'm just checking my notes here. The other thing too is, lots of the times what managers do is they put warning letters on people's files and the persons don't know about it. You don't want to do that as a leader. If you're going to put a warning on somebody's file, you should have a conversation with them. So don't think that you're going to put something on their file and then they walk in one day and say, surprise, you've had 3 warnings, and so you get to leave. It doesn't work that way. It really doesn't work that way, and that's not a very good leader. And if your company that's supporting that, that's not good. That's not good. You want to have a conversation with persons about their performance, because the thing is, people, discipline and documentation, and I teach this, discipline and documentation is about correcting the behavior. It's not saying, aha, I got you, you did it again. It's not about that. It's not about that. It's about correcting the behavior, because at the heart of it, you want people to change. You want people to understand the error of their ways. So if you're going to document somebody, they had better know about it. You had better had that conversation. Otherwise, you're going to have a very tough time with the Department of Labor. And so these are just some things to know. And terminations are never good. I really don't like doing them. I've had to do a lot in my career, and I really don't like doing them because I've had to terminate persons that I've hired. I've had to terminate persons that I was really close with, like we enjoy a great work relationship. I've had to terminate people that they were really in and clearly in the wrong. And it's hard. It's hard telling somebody that they don't have a job. And one of the things I try to do um, as a good HR professional is I try to connect with people. So I don't wait for stuff to come to HR. I don't wait for things to happen or me sitting at a separation meeting or termination meeting and having that conversation. If I see something coming to HR, I connect with them and they may be having an issue with their manager. I try to guide people along, but I've had to do what I've had to do in my role. And some people, they don't like it. Some people will not speak to me again, which is fine. Um, I guess one day they'll understand, okay? But it's never ever an easy thing to do. And I really, really, it's one of the things in my role as an HR professional that if I never had to do again, yeah, that would be it. But I have to do it. So there you go. Layoffs and redundancy. So there's a difference between layoffs and being redundant or reduction in force. So a layoff, and I'm going to speak in context based on our law in St. Kitts and Nevis. Now, in St. Kitts and Nevis, you can have a layoff, you can have a downturn in economic activity, such as what's going on right now, and you can have a layoff. No, you can have a layoff up to 12 weeks. Up to 12 weeks. Okay? So, for example, you could have a company not doing well and they say, hey, we have to lay you off, but they have to do that for up to 12 weeks. So there is a cutoff point. So what usually happens is they'll get everybody together, they'll explain the situation, you're going to get a letter to say that you've been laid off. And if you haven't gotten a letter, you should go back to your employer and say, hey, I need a letter, because you need backup, okay? You need backup. And so employers can do that up to 12 weeks. Now, when it becomes, say for example, let's deal with the easy part first. Say for example, business picks up in week 10. The employer can call you back to work and everything is dandy, okay? Now, if that doesn't happen up to the 12th week, and it's now 12 weeks has gone and a day, so 12 weeks and a day, then the employer now have to separate employment. So what does that mean? They have to say, I'm sorry, we're terminating your services, and they have to pay you notice pay. And so it's different. I think it's based on how long you've worked. It's based on how long you've worked. I think that's how notice pay is calculated. I'm not sure. I don't have my labor book right now, and I didn't jot down that part. But they have to pay you notice, and then you'll need to get a letter, which you will need to take to the Department of Labor, and then your severance will kick in. You'll get the letter, you'll take it to the Department of Labor. They'll give you a form that you have to take back to your employer so that they can complete, and it basically has like how long you work there, what your wages are, and all that stuff, your salary and stuff like that. And then the government processes that, and then you get your severance pay. Okay, and that's how it works in layoffs. So your home, if you are looking at this and you've been laid off, you should be counting down 12 weeks. Okay. And so now, when it becomes now 12, after 12 weeks, so 12 weeks and a day, if week 12 ends this Saturday, Sunday, Monday, your employer should be saying, I'm sorry, Mary, we have a termination letter for you, and they should be giving you notice and stuff like that. Okay. Now, something to note during the layoff period, our laws are there, and the labor laws in St. Kitts and Nevis, I know a lot of persons, they don't have any confidence in the Department of Labor or anything like that. And yes, there are some things that do need to change, right? There are some things that are there, but the laws are written. When I read it from an HR standpoint, because in HR you represent the company, you represent the people and the company. But when I read it, it is really meant to protect us. It is really meant to protect us. So what happens is, when persons are laid off, if you get called back to work, remember that example I gave you earlier, that if in week 10 they call you back and everything is dandy, the persons can't call you back and then say, well, you worked for 2 weeks and then you're like, hey, you're laid off again. It doesn't work like that. The law provides that if you're being called back to work, that the employer has at least 13 weeks worth of work. They can afford to employ you for at least 13 weeks. So that protects you automatically from somebody trying to be advantageous and thinking that they can just call you back and then lay you back off, and call you back and lay you back off. It doesn't work like that. So that's something important for you to note. Okay. And this is one of the reasons why I started with this information, because there's a lot of people that don't know this. There's a lot of people that don't know, and you should know. If it's your employment, you should know. No, so that's layoff. Now, when you're making somebody redundant, the difference is that you are eliminating that position out of the staffing. You don't need that position anymore. So, for example, you may be working at, let's use manufacturing. You may be working in a manufacturing plant, and there's a particular position, and it's now being automated. And what most companies try to do is they try to absorb the staff into the other aspects of the business. Sometimes it's possible, and sometimes it's not possible. And where it's not possible, then that person whose job has been outsourced or replaced by automation gets to be redundant, because you don't need that extra body, or you don't need that extra position. And so what happens is, you sit down with the person and you explain to them, unfortunately this has happened, and you give them a letter. You have to pay them notice. Okay, you have to pay them notice pay, and they go after the Department of Labor, and they get that same form, they bring it back and stuff like that, so they can get their severance. There was something I wanted to say about that. Oh yes, what I wanted to say is, in our law, I cannot remember the percentage, but if it's above a certain percentage, the employer, the business, needs to let the Labor Department know that, hey, I'm laying off X amount of my workforce. Not laying off, sorry. I'm making X amount of my workforce redundant. And they need to do this, because these are funds that are coming from the government, and they need to notify the appropriate parties and what have you. Okay. Now, if it's under a certain amount, you don't have to as an employer, but I always believe in taking care of your relationships and taking care of, keeping good relationships within your network. And so whether it is, even if it's under the number and you really don't have to let the Labor Department know, I would suggest, as employers, as good employers, you let the labor department know. Okay, and that way, if they have any questions, you know, you can answer it for them. Because lots of the times, employees, when you've been made redundant, it's upsetting. I have done two and been involved in three. Okay, so there was one that almost happened, and so there's lots of data that is to be collected, because the companies for which I work, they don't just say, hey, we're going to just get rid of people. There is a process that happens. So I've done two directly, and it it is one of the hardest things. It is harder than terminating somebody. It is harder. And what makes it really difficult is you feel like such a fraud. That's at least how I see it. Because you know that this person will not have a job come next week, Friday. And you have the information, you have to prepare the documents, you know, persons have to be selected. Um, it depends on the situation. When I said persons have to be selected, so it's a whole. You walk around, you have the information, but you can't share it with them. You want to say, you won't have a job. You want to say to them, please look a job, but you really can't. A true HR professional, you can't. And as someone who is born in St. Kitts and in St. Kitts, who went to school with a lot of persons that now work in the same establishments. St. Kitts is a very small place. It's very intimate. That's one of the things I love about it, but it also has its downside to it. And so you have to be, if you are an HR person and you look at my wavelength videos, you would know that. A weak or immature HR person would tell somebody, and you may say, well, they could tell them, all of us is one, but a true HR professional cannot do that. You can't do that. And so it is one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. But what companies can do is they can prepare. For example, they can go online, they can look at newspaper clippings of jobs, of vacancies. They can get all that information and they can give them like a packet. Okay, they can do that. They can also, if that company pays like the insurance benefit, one of the things that they can do is pay the insurance up to a certain point, so that at least that person is covered and they feel like the company cares, even though they probably won't feel that way. So there are things that you can do to cushion or try to cushion the blow. Now, to the person receiving it, it won't appear that way, but to somebody looking in, it will appear that way. And that's the most important thing. To the others, to the other staff members who are losing a friend, a coworker, or colleague, they're gonna be upset, but it will appear that way as well. It's not what you do, it's how you do it. And so these are just some of the transitions that take place during your career employment. And so what can you do? What can we do? But before I get to what can we do, the feelings that arise from all this. You'll feel anger, okay? You'll feel anger. Some people get anxiety because they don't know what the future holds. Some people are fearful, some people panic, and some people feel they're apathetic. And that means they really don't care. They don't have a lot of concern. That happens. I personally believe that people who have this apathy about them, they do care inside, but it's just a mechanism to protect them. That's just me thinking that's what happens. But these feelings are normal because you've just lost your job. These feelings are all normal. There is a change. It's a transition, right? They're normal. And so what are the next steps? What can you do? So the first thing is understand it is normal to feel the way you do. Now, even if you get terminated and you were wrong, it is normal to feel angry. Whether you're angry at the employer or whether you're angry at yourself, it is all those feelings are normal. You're human. I might react differently to you, but all your feelings are normal and valid. Okay? And that's important for people to know. You can't tell people not to feel a particular way. It's not wrong. Their feeling is their feeling, right? So your feelings are normal. The second thing I would suggest is to calm down. So after you've vented, after you've calmed down from being upset, you need to, after you've vented and get that out of your system, you need to calm down because you need to get out of your feelings. And the reason why you need to calm down is so that you can think about what are your next steps. Because I would assume that you don't want to stay unemployed. If you're looking at Wavelength, you are ambitious, you're a go-getter, you want to be better. And so you don't want to stay unemployed. So you need to calm down. It's okay to vent, but you need to calm down so that you can get out of your own way and that you can think about what you're going to do next. Now, the next thing I would suggest is to reflect on the incident. So if you were terminated, I would suggest you reflect on the incident. Is there something that you could have done better? There's always, even when we are in the right, there's always something that we could do better. That's just my take and philosophy, right? So even if you're right, even if we were in an argument and you were 100% right, how you handle the situation, there's always something that you could do better. Always remember that. And if you look at life through that, you will always be open to learning and growing. So reflect on that. If you resign, you still need to reflect. Maybe you're moving on for a better opportunity, but you need to reflect on your time at your last workplace. What could you have done better? What things are you going to take with you? You know, did you leave in a professional manner, right? There's a lot of people that they resign and they bring it straight, like in my company. In a lot of companies, you go straight to HR. But if you have a manager or a supervisor, your manager or supervisor, I feel, should be the first to know that you've resigned. I think it's only fair. I think it's only manners, right? And then HR could know afterwards, unless your company has a different policy. But either which way, the person who is leading your team should know that you've resigned. So even if you've resigned, you still need to reflect. If you've been made redundant, you need to reflect. Is this a time to pivot for you? You know, let me not jump ahead because I almost said my next point. But you need to reflect, okay? In any stage, you need to reflect. Even though we're going through this pandemic, I don't know if you've seen my videos. Take this time and reflect. So the other step, and this would be step 4, is to be careful of the advice that people give you, okay? Sometimes people are well-meaning and they mean well, sorry, but they give bad advice, bad advice, terrible advice. So be careful who you get advice from. Sometimes people give advice and they say things that they think is the truth. They might be quoting the labor laws, but they're really quoting things they've heard someone say. For example, I've never seen, and I see this a lot on Facebook, I've seen it recently, Okay, I've seen it recently, and I've heard it. Risk pay. There's nothing in the labor laws that says that a company should give somebody risk pay. But lots of people come and say, oh, well, the labor law said that I should be getting risk pay for my job. That is not true. That is not true, which is why you should know the laws for yourself. So a lot of people say things that are not true. They repeat what other people are saying. They repeat things or experiences that have happened to them, not knowing that the employer that they work for is really doing them a favor, is really being a great employer, right? And sometimes it has nothing to do with the law. So be careful where you get advice from, okay? Now, the fifth thing I would say is to update your resume. Update your resume and do it fast. Do it while everything is fresh in your mind. Your job is fresh in your mind. Update your resume. If you don't have a resume, you need to create one. If you don't know how to create one, you can contact me at the People's Brand, and I would be more than happy to work with you to get you that. I'm not going to do your resume for you, but I'll work along with you. I just want to make that clear. Because some people think that, hey, you just type it up for me and I'm done. No. We teach people to fish at the People's Brand. We teach them to fish. We don't fish for them. Okay? So update your resume, update your references. Maybe the people that you had on your references, they're dead, they've moved away, you're no longer close to them. So update your references, do that and do it quickly. You may use this period to upskill, especially if you've been made redundant. And even in this COVID-19, this pandemic, I've been saying that people need to do something. And I know that, and I've seen a couple of things on Facebook about people and their mental health and all this stuff. And while I understand that, I am of the opinion that you can't dwell in your sadness. It's okay to feel how you feel. I've been sad during this time, but I've had to pick myself up. And because life still goes on. And so we can't dwell in our mess. We can't dwell in our sadness. Things happen, but life goes on. And we have to move on. Okay? So upskill, do something. There's so many free courses online. Okay? Now, number 6 is determine your timeline for seeking employment. Now, I'm not speaking, again, just specifically for this period, because I know right now the job market may be difficult, right? To find something that's up your alley may be difficult. But in normal times, outside of this, a lot of the times we need to rest. We need to rest. Some persons are in jobs that are very, very stressful, and whatever happened, maybe they resigned, maybe they got terminated, whatever happens, they just jump back into a next job. I do not suggest it. Determine your timeline for seeking employment. Rest if you must, because rest is important. Right now, you see, coming out of this whole pandemic, is that people are realizing that well-being and mental health is very, very important. Mental health sort of was popping up on the radar over the last 2-3 years, and it's been gaining momentum, and even more so now. So well-being and mental health is important. So rest if you must, but then decide, okay, I'm going to jump back in and start looking at a job. And then 6, create an actionable plan. So what do I mean by that? Decide what you're going to do. Will you create a business? Whether you've been terminated, laid off, whatever, will you create a business? Is there something that you can do? Even now during this time, there's some persons that have skills that they've gone back to braiding hair, they've gone back to doing manis and pedis. Will you create a business? You need to ask that. And if you are, then you need to write down the steps, what you're going to do, who do you need to talk to, stuff like that, what resources you need. So don't just decide, write it down. That's why I said an actionable plan. Will you send your resumes? And to where? Have you decided where you want to go? Some persons, like in the hospitality industry, like myself, I have a lot of persons that are really seriously thinking about, do I really want to stay in such a fragile industry? Because now you realize how fragile it is. So, what are you going to do next? Where do you want to work next? Right? These are questions that you need to ask yourself and do some research, and don't just jump into any and any company. The company that you choose to work for should be aligned with your values. Will you call your contacts and people in your network? So there might be people that who are in various business places, or people who know people. Will you call those people? When are you going to call them? Write those down, put a date to them, make it actionable. And lastly, if you got terminated from your job, what are you going to tell when you go for the interview? You need to craft an answer. I'm not saying a lie, but you need to tailor the answer in such a way that you're telling the truth, right? But you are not coming across as, you know what, I need to stay away from this one. And depending on why you got terminated, that might be difficult to do, which is why when people are going down that road, I like to talk to them and say, hey, you're going down the wrong path, because these have things have a way of coming back to bite you. Some people get really fortunate because they know somebody who knows somebody, or somebody can call them up. And if you this is what happens in St. Kitts and Nevis and in small societies. But if you were to be in a larger island or country, that is not going to fly. There is nobody to call up anybody to speak on your behalf. So when you're in jobs, you need to be really mindful of that. But if you are terminated, you need to start crafting how you're going to answer the question. And of course, preparing for your interview. And so I've come to the end of Wavelength Wednesdays. I certainly hope you enjoyed this topic. I certainly hope that I was able to shed light on something that you had a question about, or maybe something that you had heard that you always wondered. It's always a pleasure coming on here and speaking about topics such as these, because it's lots of people don't know, and they don't know that they don't know. And I like to empower people, and I like for people to know what they're getting into. And so call me up, let me know if you have any questions, if you need to be coached by me, if you need your resume help on your resume, let me know, and send me an email at hellowaveney@thepeoplebrandskn.com. And I have a business phone number. It is 663-3356. You can send me a WhatsApp there with any questions that you may have. 663-3356. It's a tongue twister, I know. And great news, I now have my website up and running at www.thepeoplesbrandskn.com. www.thepeoplesbrandskn.com. And so go check it out. I'd really, really love your feedback on that. And I will see you next week. It was a pleasure. Bye.